Chen Meili learned very early in life that a name could follow a person like a shadow, cold, heavy, and impossible to outrun. She grew up in Qinghe, a small town tucked between green hills and dusty roads in the mountain province of Sichuan. It was the kind of town where everybody knew everybody, where news traveled faster than wind, and where a family's reputation could last for generations. In Qinghe, the name Luo did not carry pride. It carried shame. Meili's father, Luo Dequan, had been a charming man. That was what people always said first, that he had a wide smile, a smooth voice, and a way of making anyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. He borrowed money from neighbors with big promises and easy words. He created fake business deals on paper. He even started a community savings group that 47 families trusted him with. And then, one morning, Luo Dequan was simply gone. He had taken the money and disappeared into the crowded streets of some faraway city, leaving behind broken trust, empty pockets, and two people who had no part in any of it, his wife and his daughter. Meili was only a child when her father left. By the time she was old enough to understand what he had done, the damage was already done. The neighbors no longer greeted her mother at the market. Old friends crossed the road to avoid them. The family name had become a warning that parents whispered to their children. Her mother held on for years, quietly suffering under the weight of other people's anger and her own guilt. She apologized to everyone, even to people who had not lost anything. She worked herself thin trying to hold the family together. But the body can only carry so much. She passed away quietly one cold winter, when Meili had just turned 18. There was no gathering. No neighbors came to sit with Meili. No relatives brought food to the door. The village did not mourn because the village had long ago decided that the Luo family was not worth caring about. Meili buried her mother with the little money she had, stood alone at the grave for a long time, and then went home to figure out how to survive. She was not a weak girl. She had her mother's quiet strength and her own sharp mind. She took in sewing work from the township factories, sewing seams for small wages from early morning until late at night. She helped old farmers bring in their harvests during busy seasons. She saved every coin she earned and did something that surprised everyone who heard about it. She began paying back the debts her father had left behind. Nobody had asked her to do this. The law did not require it of her. She was not her father, and she owed nothing in any legal sense. But she had grown up watching the families her father had hurt. She had seen the old man down the road who could no longer fix his roof because his savings were gone. She had seen the woman who cried at the market when she counted her coins and came up short. Meili could not undo what her father had done, but she could try, slowly, to make something right. The village noticed. But it did not soften. She's only doing it to look good, some people said. It won't be enough, said others. Matchmakers, the women who helped arrange marriages in the town, refused to even list her name. When one young woman's mother asked about Meili as a possible match for her son, the matchmaker laughed. Who would take the swindler's daughter, she said openly, loud enough for 3 stalls in the market to hear. Nobody corrected her. Nobody said that was unkind. Boys Meili had played with as a child now pretended not to see her. Men her age looked through her. Even cousins, people who shared her blood but not her father's crimes, kept their distance. Being associated with Meili felt like a risk no one wanted to take. So she worked. And she waited. And she carried the weight of a name she had not chosen and could not change. 3 years passed like this. Meili turned 23. She was still unmarried, still alone, still showing up every day to a life that offered her very little warmth in return. Then a letter arrived from the mountain. His name was Wei Jinshan, and even people who had never met him in Qinghe knew who he was. He was 41 years old and had spent most of his life on the Tianmen Ridge, a stretch of steep, wild mountain terrain so remote that supplies had to be carried in by foot and the winters lasted half the year. He had worked as a guide for geological survey teams who came to study the land. He knew every rock face, every trail, every place where the fog settled thick in the valleys below. People told stories about Wei Jinshan. They said he had survived a rockslide at 30 years old that killed 2 of his fellow workers, pulling himself free with his bare hands. They said he once walked 18 kilometers through a winter storm, in the dark, through knee-deep snow, to bring medicine to an injured surveyor who could not walk out on his own. They said he had built his own farmhouse by hand on a south-facing slope high above the clouds, where the air was clean and the view stretched for 100 kilometers on clear days. He owned his land. He owed no money to anyone. He had lived by his own labor his whole life. He was also a widower. His wife had passed away from illness 7 years before, leaving him to raise their teenage son, Hauran, alone. He had done it without complaint and without asking for help from anyone. Wei Jinshan was not a man who made careless decisions. He thought slowly, acted carefully, and never said things he did not mean. So when he finally agreed to speak with a matchmaker, something he had avoided for years, she expected him to choose from the list of suitable women she had prepared. She had good options. Younger women from steady families. Women whose fathers had clean reputations and whose futures looked simple and smooth. Wei Jinshan looked at the list for a long moment and then set it down. He described a young woman he had seen at the Qinghe Township market the previous autumn. She had been buying vegetables, and when the vendor made a mistake and gave her too much change, she had quietly counted it, noticed the error, and handed the extra money back. The vendor had been busy. No one else was watching. She could have simply walked away and kept the coins. But she did not. He said he had gone back to the market 4 more times after that, just to see if she behaved the same way when she thought no one was paying attention. She always did. "Who is she?" he asked the matchmaker. The matchmaker stared at him. "That is Luo Meili," she said slowly. "The swindler's daughter." Wei Jinshan nodded. "I know whose daughter she is," he said calmly. "I am asking about her." When the matchmaker brought the proposal to Meili, the young woman's first thought was that there must be some mistake. She asked the matchmaker to confirm it 3 times. She asked whether the man truly understood who her father was and what he had done. Each time, the matchmaker confirmed, yes, he knew. Yes, he still wanted to meet her. Meili agreed to one meeting. Nothing more. They met at a small tea house at the edge of the township, in full view of anyone who happened to walk past. Meili had chosen the location carefully. She had lived her whole life under the eyes of people who wanted to find something wrong with her. She would not give them any reason to talk. Wei Jinshan arrived on time. He was a large man, built wide and solid from years of mountain work, but he sat across from her without any effort to seem important. He ordered tea for them both and then spoke directly, without any polite dancing around the subject. "I heard you have been paying back what your father took," he said. "I have been trying," Meili replied carefully. "How much is still left?" She told him the number. It was not a small number. He was quiet for a moment, looking at his teacup. Then he looked up and said, "I am not interested in marrying your father. I am not interested in marrying his name or his mistakes. I watched you at the market. You did not know I was watching. That is the only version of a person I trust, the one they show when they think no one is looking." He paused. "You were the same every time." Meili did not allow herself to cry. She had learned to be careful with feelings that moved too fast, from people who were still strangers. But something inside her shifted, quietly, like a door that had been stuck for a very long time and was now, perhaps, just slightly open. She asked for 2 weeks to give her answer. He said he would wait. The town had plenty to say. It always did. She is trapping him. He does not understand what he is walking into. She is only doing it to escape. It will fall apart within a year. The voices followed Meili everywhere she went during those 2 weeks, slipping under doors and through market stalls and over backyard fences. Meili heard all of it. She had been hearing things like it her whole life. But she did not spend those 2 weeks dreaming. She spent them working, not with her hands this time, but with her mind. She was a practical person. Life had never allowed her to be anything else. Before she said yes to anyone, she needed to know the truth about who he was. She found the survey teams that had worked with Wei Jinshan in the mountains and asked them about him. She traveled by bus to a neighboring county to find a man who had worked on his farm for 2 seasons. She quietly located the widow of the colleague who had died in the rockslide, and learned that Wei Jinshan had supported that family financially for 3 full years afterward, telling no one and asking for nothing in return. She asked the matchmaker not about his money or his land but about his temper. Did he shout? Did he blame others for his problems? Did his words match his actions? Every answer she received pointed to the same picture, a man who was simply, honestly, exactly what he appeared to be. On the 14th day, she sent her answer. Yes. The wedding was quiet. There was no large gathering, no rented hall, no long banquet with many tables. They registered at the township office with 2 witnesses, shared a simple meal at his younger sister's home, and then drove up into the mountains as the evening light turned the high peaks a warm golden color. Meili had never lived at high elevation before. Wei Jinshan's farmstead sat near the top of a long ridge, nearly 2,000 meters above sea level. When she stepped out of the truck and stood on the land for the first time, the air felt different, thinner, colder, cleaner. The sounds of the valley below were completely gone. There were no neighbors within shouting distance. No one to watch her or judge her or whisper about her father. She stood at the edge of the slope and looked down at the haze where Qinghe lay hidden below, and she felt something she could not immediately name. It took her several days to understand what the feeling was. It was what it felt like to not be someone's cautionary tale. But life on the mountain was not a dream. It was real and hard and full of adjustment. Wei Jinshan's son, Haoren, was 14 years old and not at all sure what to make of her. He was polite in the careful way that young people are polite when they do not know someone but feel they must be. He did not cause trouble. But he kept his distance. The farm work was harder than Meili had expected. Her hands, already rough from years of sowing and harvest labor, found new ways to ache. The winters at that elevation were serious, cold that settled into the walls of the house and stayed for months. And she and Wei Jinshan were still, underneath it all, 2 people who had lived separate lives for 40 years and were now learning how to share one. They were not always smooth. There were misunderstandings. There were evenings when both of them were tired and words came out wrong. There were mornings when Meili woke up and missed her mother so much that the grief felt physical, like something pressing against her chest. 6 months into their marriage, she came to Wei Jinshan one evening and told him honestly that she was lonely. She missed the valley, even the parts of it that had been cruel to her. She missed her mother. She did not know exactly what she had expected from mountain life, but the silence sometimes felt like too much. He did not try to fix it. He did not offer explanations or solutions. He sat down beside her on the farmhouse steps in the dark, handed her a cup of tea, and said simply, "I know. This mountain takes time." That was all. But it was enough. It was exactly the right thing to say, and she never forgot it. As the seasons passed, something began to grow, not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily, the way plants grow on high ground, slow and tough and deep-rooted. Meili had always been capable. What she had never had before was a stable place in which that capability could fully open. She started by organizing Wei Jinshan's farm records, which had been kept in no particular system that anyone but he could follow. In the process, she discovered 3 years of tax payments he had overpaid and never reclaimed, money that came back to them when she filed the correction. She enrolled in a correspondence course in agricultural accounting. Then another in cooperative management. When a neighboring farming family on the next ridge came to Wei Jinshan with a complicated land registration problem that had been draining them for 2 years, it was Meili who sat down with the paperwork and worked through it. She found the error, wrote the letters that needed writing, and helped them resolve it in 6 weeks. Word traveled. Other families came. Mountain communities are small, and trust, once given, spreads. She became, without ever planning it, someone people came to for help. And they trusted her, which was something she had not been given freely since she was a small child. Haoren warmed slowly. There was no single moment that changed everything between them. It happened the way most real things happen, through small moments that add up over time. But if she had to point to one, it was the 3 nights before his university entrance examination in his 2nd year of high school. Meili did not know the exam subjects as well as he did. She did not pretend otherwise. What she did know was how to organize a problem, how to find the structure inside something complicated, how to stay steady under pressure. She sat with him those 3 nights, not teaching him facts, but teaching him how to think clearly when he was nervous. He passed the exam. He was accepted to a university in the city of Chengdu. At the train station, as he was about to board, he turned and hugged her. It was brief and a little awkward, the hug of a young man who is not yet sure how to show that he cares. He said, "Tell Baba I will call when I get there." Then, after a pause, he added, "And you too. I will call you too." She carried those words with her for years. The debt list, the 47 families her father had taken money from, took 11 more years to complete. Mei kept a handwritten record of every family, every amount, and every payment she made. Wei Jinshan knew about all of it and helped without being asked, setting aside money each season without ever making Mei feel that it was his generosity instead of their shared decision. The last name on the list was an elderly couple who had lost their entire retirement savings to Luo Dequan's scheme. When Mei arrived at their door one afternoon with the final envelope, the old woman opened it and then looked up with tears on her face. "Child," she said, holding Mei's face gently in both hands. "You did not owe us this." "I know," Mei said quietly. She left before they could see her cry. By the time Mei turned 41, the same age Wei Jinshan had been when he first asked about her at the market, the farmstead on Tianmen Ridge was a different place from what she had arrived at all those years ago. The slope below the house had been terraced and planted with medicinal herbs that regional cooperatives bought every harvest. The farm records were organized and clean. The house was well kept and warm. Haoren called every Sunday, from Chengdu, where he now had a wife and a child of his own. He always called both of them. He always asked about both of them. That detail, small as it was, never stopped meaning something to Mei. Wei Jinshan was 59 now, and his hair had gone silver at the temples. His hands were more worn than they had been, but his manner was the same, steady, unhurried, honest. He sat beside her on the slope one afternoon reading a cooperative bulletin, and without looking up, he folded back a page and held it out to her because he thought she would find it useful. It was the kind of small thing that only happens between two people who have spent many years truly paying attention to each other. A journalist came once to write about women in rural mountain farming. She asked Mei, during the interview, whether she felt the people of Qinghe owed her an apology for the way they had treated her. Mei thought about the question seriously before answering. "They did not ruin my life," she said at last. "They only made me someone who had to build it very carefully. Looking at what I built, I am not sure I am unhappy about how it turned out." The journalist wrote the words down, though she was not sure what to do with them. Mei did not mind. She had long since stopped needing to be understood by people who were looking up from the valley below. She was a mountain person now. She had the soil under her nails and the clean air in her lungs and a man beside her who had chosen her not because she was easy to choose, but because he had watched her be honest when no one was watching, and decided that was exactly the kind of person he wanted to spend the rest of his life beside. Her father's name had once felt like a sentence. It turned out to be something else entirely, the beginning of a story that took her somewhere much higher than the place where it started.